sink into, and let's say if our reasoning faculty really hits a kind of like a wall, we kind of like let ourselves sink into that and let it go for a moment. So, and what you said, I think, right, that again, that this boundary maybe between the I and the Tao, that we all have separate proposals. I was also thinking about that, because then again, the trust, let's say a trusting faculty, that would really help us to kind of like bridge those gaps.
Yeah.
So that they're not like, I don't know, 3 or 4 individual speakers.
Yeah.
But that there's really a collective emergence evolving in the dialogue. I would just maybe really make like an intro and say something like that it's not about reasoning per se.
Yeah.
This is not an exercise in kind of like improving our reasoning, although that might be something that can also happen.
Yeah.
Because I think reason needs to be in service of love or interpersonal trust or something like that.
Yeah.
And then faith is also in a sense important, right? Because how do we comport ourselves to that principle, the logos with the big L? And I think faith is also something that's important. We kind of like we come there with an attitude of faith in that structure.
Yeah.
And if we notice that we are maybe doubting, because I think that can also happen very easily in the practice. Maybe you doubt yourself, maybe for whatever reason, that I don't know, you're not fully there. You're not as present maybe as other people. That we also kind of like have something that we can kind of like give that space. Yeah. Right. This is what John, I think, wrote in this instructions with the projections.
Yes.
How do we address those?
Yes.
If we really notice, okay, now they're coming up, the projections, like that, maybe there's like, if let's say the listener really has a lot of projections or doubt or so, that he or she can say something like, I'm really suffering here. I notice I'm projecting a lot. I have maybe an attitude of antipathy or so, or something that really doesn't let me through to you. Then that there's something like an out route, so you can like time out, and we just reflect on that a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. And I was also thinking about, Gaia. Are there sort of preconditions? Is there sort of like a preliminary practices that we're recommending before we do this?
Yeah. So doing some, like, first getting kind of personally related, right? So doing, being with you, I'm noticing, or
all that stuff,
like just getting the reciprocal, opening the horizontal. And my recommendation is that we do that, given that that's so important, that we just do that until we feel that that's happening, right? Like we actually let that go. And who knows, maybe we end up doing it for the whole 2 hours, right? I want to make that fine, right? Let's just keep attuning to and following the movement of that. So we can start off with some circling exercises, and then we can move into whatever virtue that we're starting with. As I've thought about this, it's interesting. I like the way I've been thinking about this. Tell me what you guys think. Is that we pick the virtue that, like let's decide on the for the next one, the virtue that we want to do now, and let's have somebody, right, sit with that virtue for the week, right? Whatever that means, right? Whether that means reading about it, thinking about it, looking up the etymology of the word, and walk with it for a week. And they come, right? They come, and they like with having walked with it, say the first proposal.
Man, that's already developing character. I mean, that's already doing that. That's a wonderful idea.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why can't we all do that?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, like let's.
Why not all of us?
Yeah, yeah. So
Not
we'll
just
all walk
one.
with it, but like the one person will just kind of they'll have the horizon of, and I want to
Right.
recommend that I want to recommend that you don't come with the proposal already worked out.
Yeah.
That even if you kind of got one, you just let it go, right? And then go into
Mhm.
the like the circling part, get related, and then genuinely let go into the proposing.
Right.
Yeah.
And can I just get some clarification, Guy?
Yeah.
Because we're sort of a pilot project, from what I understanding. That you're thinking maybe
Mhm.
to fully develop this as a possible new contribution to the ecology of practices
Yeah.
that are being developed.
Yeah.
That this is a particular
Yeah.
practice,
Yeah.
and that in order, I see this as like we're recommending that you do these preliminary practices and have some
Yeah.
some experience with that
Yeah.
before you enter into this and do
Yes.
this. It's an advanced practice.
Totally. Totally.
Right, and so that uh, that should also be as part of the
Yeah.
if
Absolutely.
if you're presenting it
Yeah.
elsewhere. Yeah.
So like if you look
Uh-huh.
at the, yeah, exactly. So if you like look at the structure of the circling into Dialogos course that
Yeah.
we did, what we started
So
off
there.
with is mindfulness, right?
Yeah.
Like really
Yeah.
in the practice of grounding in your own sense of self of awareness, right? And
Mhm.
being open in that way.
Mhm.
Then we went into contemplation, right?
Mhm.
And that was the form that we used were the Neoplatonic levels of being, essentially, like it. And that's where you kind of take contemplation is where you, in a certain sense, you you attone to something, right, and let it affect, right, something greater than you, essentially, right. Um, Whereas like meditation is a bit like this, right? Um, it's like taking off your glasses and looking at them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Contemplation is putting them back on, right? And then
Seeing the
looking
bigger.
out with that. Yeah.
Yeah. The bigger.
And then we went into circling, right? The intersubjective.
Yeah.
Um, then we went into after that, then we went into philosophical contemplation, which is basically you take a paragraph or
Yeah.
two of an author, um, in a philosopher or somebody like that. Do slow reading, right? Then you take a piece of it and then you all chant it together.
Yeah.
Then you do like a series of different ways of speaking to it and from it
Mhm.
and by it, and then it goes into free form conversation. And then the
Yeah.
final thing that we do, right, is dialectic into dialogos, which is what we're going to be practicing here, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So like, for example, I'll like, if it just personally, what are the practices that I'm doing right now? So I meditate somewhere between 30 minutes and 3 hours a day. Um, it's usually like with my meditation, I would say it's based in kind of a Buddhist, I don't know, whatever a Buddhist sense of, I mean, mostly I'm like thinking a lot about or tuning into sunyata, like the emptiness of things, and different practices that that afford that. And
Mhm.
also for me, meditation is also for me is about, in some sense, cultivating the disposition of wonder. Um,
Yeah.
right. So there's that. So I do that. Then I go and I'll walk and do meditations, but I'll also at some point I've been doing this thing lately where I have like an app that, you know, that it records your voice, but it also transcribes it. And so I've been doing a couple of things where as I walk, I try to let the environment speak, right? So I listen to the environment around, and I just translate it, if you will. I'll just like try to, in some sense, speak the environment, or I'll just walk and speak poetry that I then pick up later and develop.
What's the app called?
Otter, that's the one I use. Otter,
Oh,
Otter. Yeah.
great, thanks.
And what I like about it is that Otter, it can, for example, if we use it on a dialogue, it can tell the difference between who's talking, right? So it's just not all bunched up.
Nice.
So it can tell when you stopped and started, and right. So it's really nice. And then I'll do another one when I do a lot actually when I'm walking, but then there's another one where I don't even know what to call this. I just made it up one point where you walk along, and I just start to bring my awareness to the farthest out periphery as possible, and then just continue to walk. And every time I notice that I've kind of like, and it's so funny because you don't realize how focused you get. But then whenever you notice is bringing it back, bringing it back, bringing it back. That
Right.
does something really cool.
Yeah.
There's that one, and then I'll read. I'll like do Lectio Divina, right, or contemplative reading. Probably do that 2-3 times a week, probably on average. And then I circle all the time. And then I tell my wife I love her all the time. That's pretty easy.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
They need to be told over and over and over.
Yes. Yes. What about you guys? Like, what are some of the practices that you guys do along with this?
Well, my meditation practice, they call it silent illumination, which is just a shunyata sort of practice. But there's also huato, that's the what is it in Zen? It's Renze Zen. Anyway, it's koan practice, but not in the way that Japanese Zen practice. It's we don't have to go through a series of koans. It's the huato literally means before words, before the word.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, what is that? It's sort of like, and it's not even what the fusis. It's not what it points to that is before any what whatsoever, right? And so I like that. That's a very I love that practice right from the start. I really enjoy that practice. So depending on the level of my mental activity, I sort of do a combination of both if I need to get, yeah. And then the other practice that I do is called the dyad practice, which is meditation in communication. Have you ever done that? So
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's been a wonderful entry practice for me to entry level to at least get the hang of focusing on what is happening and then communicating it to my partner with no response or reflection or anything back at all. Just it's my, kind of it right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it really focuses on reapplying the stuff that remains in the subconscious, basically, like bringing that into form and then I mean, you hear yourself saying it, and wow, I didn't know
Yeah.
I felt that way, sort of thing, yet, and that sort
Totally.
of thing. But that's been really helpful for me.
Oh,
And I've been doing it all along. I've trained in it. I've run retreats in it, but
mm,
I'm getting more back into it. I dropped away when I went into serious Zen practice, and I'm getting more into it. And I'm going to be staffing a retreat in September, and you know, I
that's
find that
great.
very helpful. Yeah,
That's great.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Yeah, so I do that, and then I'm doing tea groups and bone dialogues,
Uh-huh.
and and I found I'm doing circling with the European circling people actually too.
Ah, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes. Circling Europe.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Right on.
yeah, which is really nice. Yeah, I found that that I've learned so much through that. Yeah.
That's great.
Hmm. And then I've got my raspberries and my chickens.
That's almost right. Being in nature and interacting with nature is almost the greatest, right?
What about you, Dan?
Yeah, recently a lot of people I mean immersion, right? We call this immersion. Like I have like I did so we do just in the last time we started reading the Platonic dialogues together,
Mm.
and for like the last 3 weeks or so we also did just a dialectic into Dialogos.
Oh, great.
And now we decided that we combine it. We kind of like dialectic into Dialogos on whatever the virtue is in the Platonic dialogue, and then talk about the dialogue.
Lovely.
Mm,
With some of the people from the Halcyon, so the from Johannes, where through whom I've met Guy initially. Then we do the philosophical fellowship and all those dialogical practices that Guy had shown me in the last year. We try to do them on a very regular basis,
mhm.
at least once, like let's say not every week, but at least so like 2-3 weeks, at least once.
Yeah.
Um, so that's very helpful for me. I do meditation regularly, and I do my strolls regularly. Where I live in a very rural place, and
Right.
Lovely.
so and before that, before that, I've also done other things like, for example, tea ceremony or
Mm.
buto. I don't know if if
No.
you've ever heard of this. This is a kind of Japanese dance form that's
Mm.
it's more like a shadow practice actually. Kind of like one wants to confront you kind of like with the dark inside you, and you kind of like, but you dance kind of like not in a special form, but you just let whatever comes up in you just show itself through your body.
Mm.
Huh.
Music?
It's called, no, it's not with music. It's called buto.
Oh, without music.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you can also, right, it's also with music, but the music is rather disruptive and
Okay,
eerie a
yeah.
little bit.
Yeah.
It's and you do practices like, for example, you can imagine, for example, that you're a special animal or so,
Oh, yeah.
and kind of like try to enact that.
Yeah.
So these are just I did ikebana for a while,
Mm,
and
right.
flower arrangement. But I now, right, recently I'm doing the meditation, I'm doing my philosophical groups, and I'm really into dialogical practices now. I do them not 2 or 3 times every week
Yeah.
with
Wonderful, isn't it?
someone.
It's
Yeah.
just wonderful. Yeah.
And what would you
Yeah.
say that since you've been doing them so often for a bit
Yeah.
now, what's been the impact on you that you can see? How's it impacted you or affected you that things that you've noticed? You seem like you've lost weight and you're a little bit taller to me. I'm just kidding.
I like um
Forgive me.
right? We don't. This is a funny thing, right? We don't know how tall we are when we just talk over Zoom all the time,
No,
right?
I
This
have
is
no
this
idea.
is so strange. Like I hear this then when people meet in real life.
Yeah.
Oh, he's so small. I didn't, or he's so tall. I didn't expect it. Anyhow, I think I'm getting more attentive in the dialogues. During the dialogues, I pick up more cues, more also just what the body wants to say, but maybe the mouth doesn't say, or what you're holding back. I'm really getting this kind of like embodied sense as well of the practice. That's really, I think, something that I've really picked up on.
Mm.
And also just the patterns of how intelligibility emerges.
Yeah.
That's so, and how different also those patterns can be, and how I don't know how wonderful it is when we do this in the practice, that there is like the logos really takes a very peculiar shape that's very right, that we can't describe really.
Yeah.
In a kind of physical sense, but it's very beautiful. It's always beautiful, and it's always blows my mind how beautiful it is.
It is beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, it really is mind blowing. Yeah.
Great.
And that we kind of like can tune, right? We participate in the creation of that beautiful form or structure of that logos that's taking shape.
Yes.
I think that's so. I'm getting a little bit more sense of just how that evolves.
Right.
Do you also feel a sort of expansion of the self through this?
Not just maybe of myself, but of this kind of Tao sense. I really get how I'm interconnected to other people, and how we are connected to and through each other in language. I'm that Taoing sense is very strong, I would say.
Yeah.
Really right in the fellowship sense, right? The kind of like right in this philosophical fellowship sense, that we really become fellows to each other.
Right. Yeah.
And there's one of the things. So there's another thing just that's on the horizon for me with the Circling Institute. We're just completing a particular project, but then we're going to turn our attention to creating. The vision of this is to take all of these things about the ecology of practice and create a something like a digital courtyard, or something like, imagine if you had a town square that was a place where an ecology of practices were going on all day, right? And John's going to be a part of this, and we're going to kind of start to design layers of practices and really put some thought of it. And it'll be like a membership kind of a thing where people, pay, I don't know, some $50-$60 or something like that. And what's interesting, what I'm really interested in this, like, to just, because I think it's the kind of thing that I think it's directly speaking to what people actually need. And just this idea that that you have a place, right, where you can like do all of these practices, and they're going on throughout the day, right? And the opportunities for leadership for people to step into leadership around that, and all these kinds of things. So it's also something that's on the horizon as well for me. I'm super excited about that. But the thing about practice is, what's really interesting to me is like when because if we go with the muscle metaphor, right, it's is the way that when that muscle or that capacity shows up in your life in a way that you find out after the fact. That's the part of it that's really interesting. And I think that for me, I've noticed with doing this so far is what the quality of what I notice, even in the most simple logistical things. I'm going, oh, I saw that differently. Right? I'm responding to the way I just cleaned up that corner in a different way, right? There's this kind of ways, these ways where it's like when we're not even thinking about it, life shows up differently, right, through these practices. I think that's really the key thing, is that because my way of understanding it is there's something about, like, we say, well, even Bateson talked about it like this, that behavior is always coupled with perception, right? They're almost like if my perception changes, how I respond, right, is going to change. And I can only respond to something I can see. So I think it's like how things just like this operates at the level of how the world discloses, the structures that inform that disclosure or allow that disclosure. And then but as the world's disclosing differently, I will find myself in a different relationship to it through my actions and my behaviors. And those things start to catch on, right? And I think about it, it's like these practices are working on kind of like, you could say, if you put it psychologically, something like the structures of perceiving, right? Yeah. That's where I think they really impact and where you can really notice the personal difference through it. So let's all keep tracking that. So this is great.
And the opportunity for new structures, it just presents itself, like it just bang, it's right there.
Yeah, there it is. Right? Yeah, there it is. All right.
It's just incredible. Yeah.
So this is great.
Yeah, this is wonderful.
Looking forward to this. So next Thursday, I have a suggestion in terms of a virtue. I'll just throw it in there. We can talk about it. My thought was for it to be reverence.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And one of the reasons I think why I was drawn to reverence is that it feels to me that at a deep level, this is a reverential practice, right? Like we're doing this because we're in reverie about whatever it is that we get in closer contact with. And so that's that was my thinking about reverence. And I've been that reverence and wonder, although I don't know if wonder is really a virtue, but reverence definitely is. So I want to put that in the middle. Yeah.
The result of that. But it's a wonderful, I see it as a wonderful, like, offering the self to the practice as well. I mean, yeah, that's wonderful.
Sounds good.
Reverence?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
We're on.
Okay,
cool.
Okay, so let's walk with reverence. How about if I give the first proposal with it?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. May the reverence begin. I'm so excited to do this, and I'm so excited to get to know you at deeper and deeper levels. This is awesome.
Yeah. Same here. Lovely.
All right.
Get to know you today. Bye.
Much love. See you next Thursday. Bye.
I'm happy that we did this. And
yeah, I'm very happy.
You.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.